Let's start solving section 3 of Reading Academic Test 1 from book 19. Let's first understand the heading and subheading of the passage. Misinformation means incorrect or false information. Persistence means continuing something even when it is difficult. We usually use this word in the context of someone being persistent and continuing to work hard. Peril means serious danger or risk. There is a lot of false information, fake news, rumors, etc. around us, especially because of the internet. From the heading of the passage, we get that the passage is about how misinformation continues, it is there always, and what are the dangers of this misinformation. Moving on to the subheading now. Brian Southwell looks at. This part is not really relevant until and unless this name is mentioned somewhere in the passage. So, someone looks at how brains check information, confirm information, how human brains figure out whether something is right or wrong. And Brian Southwell discusses some of the difficulties of fighting falsehoods or misinformation that is found everywhere and that is very common. We now look at the questions of the passage. First, we have multiple choice questions or MCQs. Next, gap fill questions with options given. And lastly, yes, no, not given questions. We'll start with multiple choice questions. What we know about multiple choice questions is that the questions are in the same order as the information in the text. That is, wherever we find the answer to the 27th question, the 28th will be after that, 29th will be after that, and so on. The first thing we do is try to find the tentative location of the answer in the passage. In case of the 27th question, the number is already given. So this is the first paragraph. The question says, what point does the writer make about misinformation in the first paragraph? Now I go through all the options so that I know what kind of information I'm looking for in the passage. Meanings of some of the words from the options are on your screen. Now I start going through the paragraph, trying to see where the information in these options is mentioned. These punctuation marks are dashes. They are different from hyphens, which are shorter and which are used to connect words. Dashes are used in sentences to emphasize some information or to add extra details. Here are a couple of examples. If there are two dashes in a sentence, you can cross out the part between them and the sentence will still make sense. The book was fascinating. The part between the dashes is giving extra information about the book. Crossing out this part can help simplify long sentences. If there is one dash and then the sentence ends, the dash usually introduces a thought or some detail. Once again, the first part of the sentence is complete in itself. We can apply the same thing here. Cross out the part between the two dashes. Misinformation is perhaps an inevitable part of the world. And the part between the dash tells us that misinformation could be spread on purpose or it could be by mistake. But it is not a new problem. Option A in the question says misinformation is a relatively recent phenomenon. This says it is relatively or comparatively new. This part clearly says it is not a new problem. So option A is incorrect. People likely have lied to one another for roughly as long as verbal communication has existed. This sentence means that most probably people have been lying since people started talking and speaking. Deceiving others, that is, tricking others or lying to others, is an opportunity to gain advantage, motivate others, or to protect interpersonal bonds or relationships. Deceiving others means lying to others or spreading misinformation. And in this sentence, we are given three different reasons why people may lie or spread misinformation: to gain advantage over someone, to motivate others, or to protect relationships. Option D says there may be a number of reasons, that is, there could be several or many reasons why people lie or spread misinformation. The last sentence of the paragraph says that inadvertently or without meaning to, people have been sharing wrong information for thousands of years. This part also tells us that option A is incorrect, but there is no mention of options B and C in the paragraph. So the answer to the 27th question is D. Let's start with the 28th question now. What does the writer say about the role of technology? Technology is a word which may help us locate where the answer could be. The previous answer was from the first paragraph, so we are expecting the answer after the first paragraph. And because the next answer has to be from the fourth paragraph, most probably this answer should be from either the second or the third paragraph. The very first sentence of the second paragraph mentions technology, and I don't see any mention of technology in the third paragraph. So I'm expecting the answer of the 28th question to be from the second paragraph. Let's go through the options in the question now. It may at some point provide us with a solution to misinformation. This means that technology may at some point in future give a solution to the problem of misinformation. It could fundamentally alter the way in which people regard information. Fundamentally alter means to change something completely. Regard means how you consider something or think of something. So, technology could completely change how people think of information. This again says something could happen means we are again talking about something that could happen in the future. It has changed the way in which organizations use misinformation. Technology has changed how companies use misinformation. Has changed means it has already happened. So we are talking about past and present here. It has made it easier for people to check whether information is accurate. Because of technology, people can check whether some information is correct or incorrect. Again, we are talking about something that has already happened, so past and present, not future. Now that we have understood the four options, we start going through the paragraph. The second paragraph has only two sentences. The first sentence says that now, because of technology, information can reach large audiences. So, information can be spread to a lot of people easily, whether it is because of radio or television or internet, etc. And because it is easy to spread information to a lot of people, the potential or the possibility, which means something could happen, of effects of misinformation are huge. Looms large is a phrase which means something which is very big and very dangerous and could happen in future. So the first sentence just says that because of technology, misinformation can reach a lot of people, and because of this, the possibility of having negative effects is bigger now than in the past. There is no information about how organizations are using misinformation, and there is no information about how people can check whether something is correct or incorrect. The next sentence has over time. Over time means gradually or through time, which means in future. So the second sentence in the paragraph says that the way or the approach to correct misinformation could come from the same patterns of mass communication. So the same patterns of mass communication refers to technology. Mass communication is reaching large audiences across the globe. The means to correct misinformation means the solution to misinformation. So at some point, that is over time in future, from technology, that is technology which makes mass communication easy, that is something that is mentioned in the first sentence, can provide a solution or a means to correct misinformation. Solution in the question refers to means to correct in the passage. At some point in the question corresponds to over time in the passage. And another important thing is that the first sentence mentions that technology helps spread information to a lot of people. This means mass communication. And the second sentence has no mention of the word technology, but it just says the patterns of mass communication, which is connected to technology. So the answer to the 28th question is A. The 29th question clearly mentions the fourth paragraph. What is the writer doing in the fourth paragraph? Let's go through the options first. Is the writer comparing different opinions of people about misinformation? Explaining how effects of misinformation have changed over time. That means from past to present. Outlining or giving summary of the things connected with misinformation which are important today, that is at present. Describing the attitude of policymakers towards misinformation in media. Policymakers are the people who create laws, which means the government or the authorities. Having understood this, let's now move to the paragraph. The first sentence of the paragraph mentions that there are three observations or three things which are observed about misinformation in today's or present world of mass media, which deserve to be noticed. And these three things deserve to be noticed by the researchers, policymakers, and everyone who consumes this mass media. Mass media means any kind of media that reaches a lot of people. That includes print media such as newspapers or electronic media such as TV, radio, and internet. After this, the three things which are noticed or observed about the misinformation in media of any kind is mentioned. The first point says that at first people believe the misinformation they get. The second point says that the media do not block misinformation before it appears. That is, before the information appears on either TV or in the newspaper, this information is not blocked by the owners of the TV channel or the newspaper. So, the information does reach a lot of people. And the third point that is made is that fighting this misinformation, acting against this information, takes a lot of resources, a lot of time, money, etc. So, in this paragraph, the first sentence tells us that these three things that warrant the attention are important things or significant things. In the fourth paragraph, the writer is outlining which issues or which observations connected with misinformation or related to misinformation are significant today. Significant corresponds to warrant the information, today corresponds to contemporary. The other three options are not mentioned at all. Yes, It is mentioned that people initially believe misinformation, but there is no comparison of the different opinions of people. There is no mention of how misinformation has changed over time. This whole paragraph is about what happens now. And there is no mention of the attitude of policymakers. It just mentions that policymakers should make a note of the significant things. So the answer to the 29th question is C. Let's start with the 30th question now. This question mentions USA and the abbreviation FDA. These two can help us find out where the answer could be located in the passage. United States and FDA are mentioned in the 6th paragraph. So the answer should be from this paragraph. Let's now understand the options. What point does the writer make about regulation in the USA? Regulation means some kind of a rule or law. So this would mean regulation regarding misinformation in the USA. The guidelines issued by the FDA need to be simplified. Guideline means some kind of recommendation or advice. This word is very similar to the words regulation and law, although the specific meaning is slightly different. So, option A says that whatever guidelines, whatever advice, whatever recommendations are given by FDA, they are too complicated, they need to be simple. Regulation does not affect people's opinion on new prescription drugs. Here, drugs means medicines, and prescription drugs means medicines which are prescribed by or ordered by a doctor. So, option B says people have some opinions about new medicines, and these opinions are not in any way changed because of or affected because of the regulations. The USA has more regulatory bodies than most other countries. Regulatory bodies are organizations which make regulations and enforce regulations. So, as compared to other countries, USA has more such organizations. Option D says regulation fails to prevent misinformation from appearing in the media. So, there are some rules, but even though these rules are there, misinformation is still there in the media. Let's start reading the paragraph now. The first sentence of the paragraph mentions that misinformation can appear in media without being blocked. Preemptively means something that is done in advance. So, misinformation appears in media and it is not stopped beforehand by the people who own these media houses. We had found the answer to the 29th question from the 4th paragraph. And this mentioned three different observations regarding media. The second one mentioned that electronic and print media do not block the misinformation before it appears. Most probably, what we are reading now in the 6th paragraph refers to this. Although we have not read the 5th paragraph yet, because from USA and FDA, we were able to figure out that the answer would be in the 6th paragraph. So we skipped the 5th paragraph for the time being. The regulatory bodies or the regulatory structures, such as FDA, are mentioned from the second sentence. So this is the part we are starting from. The nature of the regulatory bodies in the United States. After the colon, this nature of regulatory bodies is explained. Regulatory agencies or regulatory structures or regulatory bodies, here that would be in USA, tend to or usually focus on post hoc detection. Post hoc means after something has happened. Just the word post should give you an idea that it is talking about afterwards. Detection means to find out something. So this sentence says that the regulatory bodies in USA usually focus on detecting misinformation after the broadcast or printing of the information. This sentence, starting with organizations, mentions that organizations such as FDA offer considerable or large amounts of monitoring, notification, etc., but do not preemptive censoring. To censor something means to remove the objectionable parts. Preemptive means something that is done before. Again, from this part of the word pre, we can get an idea that we are talking about before. Pre part of the word means before, post means after. So this sentence almost repeats what is said in the previous sentence. This sentence says there is post hoc detection, which means there is detection or finding of misinformation afterwards. This sentence says there is typically or usually no censoring or control before. From this part itself, we can get an idea that option D is correct. Regulation fails to prevent misinformation from appearing in the media. If there is no control beforehand, if there is only control post something has happened, it means that misinformation does appear in the media. This sentence, starting with the FDA, mentions that people can report if some ad is giving wrong information about any drugs. The sentence starting with such programs says that programs or regulations are useful, but still they do not keep false advertising off the airwaves. That is, they do not keep the misinformation from being broadcasted. So, first misinformation is broadcasted, later, someone would report it is wrong, and then it would be taken off, which means the regulations do not prevent misinformation from appearing in the media. There is no mention about the guidelines or regulations being too difficult to understand. So, A is incorrect. There is a mention of people reporting things, but nothing about people's opinions about drugs. So, B is not mentioned either. And there is no mention of how many regulatory bodies USA has or how many regulatory bodies other countries have. This comparison is also not given. So the answer to the 30th question is D. Let's now start with the next set of questions. Gap fill questions with options given. That is, we need to figure out which of these options would fit into which of these blanks. What we know about this question type is that the answers are usually from one part of the passage. That is, we usually find all the answers from within one or two paragraphs. Also, the answers are usually in the same order as the information in the text. If they are out of order, they are still very close to each other. The options that we are given for answers usually have either one word or two words. In this case, we are given two words. Whenever there are two words, usually it is a combination of one adjective plus one noun. When we'll be looking for answers, we'll focus on the noun part of each option. This can make it easier to choose the correct option. The first thing we do is try to get the tentative location of these answers in the passage. We can see two names mentioned in the questions, Descartes and Spinoza. In the passage, these names are mentioned in the fifth paragraph. So this is where we expect the answers to be. Now let's start understanding one sentence of these questions at a time. and then look for the answers in the passage. Although people have blank to misinformation, there is debate about precisely how and when we label something as true or untrue. So people have something to misinformation, and there is a discussion or an argument about exactly when people decide or name some information as whether it is true or untrue. The question starts with although, and so does the second sentence of the paragraph. That does not necessarily mean the answer would come from the second sentence. Let's understand the first sentence. The first sentence means that it is important to understand where people initially or first get misinformation, and this understanding of where they get misinformation from can help us understand what future problems could be there. This is not what the question is about. Let's start with the next sentence. Individuals in the passage corresponds to people, information that is false, misinformation, has garnered debate. There is debate. Exactly, precisely. So, although individuals come across misinformation, the answer here is a synonym of come across. From the options that we have, exposure means to be in contact with something or to come across something. Frequent means regularly or fairly routine. So, although people have frequent exposure to misinformation, there is a debate about how and when we label something as true or untrue. The answer to the 31st question is frequent exposure, that is G. Moving on to the next sentence of the question. The philosophers Descartes and Spinoza had something about how people engage with information. Engage means to become involved with something or to interact with something. This is where we had found the information to the 31st question. And Descartes and Spinoza are anyway mentioned from this sentence onwards. So, this is what we'll focus on. There are quite a few big words in this one sentence. Simple meanings of these words are on your screen. The dilemma mentioned here refers to this confusion about how and when people label something as true or false. So, this confusion of different choices is explained in short by the difference or comparison between how Descartes and Spinoza describe human information engagement. That is, how people engage with information. With conflicting predictions. Predictions means some statement or forecast about what would happen in future. So these conflicting predictions or opposing predictions are by Descartes and Spinoza, and these predictions have only recently been tested properly. Our answer comes from this. The philosophers Descartes and Spinoza had conflicting predictions about how people engage with information or about human information engagement. Predictions is the noun here. That is the word we focus on when we try to look for the correct answer from the given options. Predictions typically means forecast, but none of these options fit in this context. The only word that fits is ideas. These two philosophers had conflicting ideas or different ideas about how people engage with information. One thing that could confuse you is the word conflict here. Conflict means a disagreement or an argument with someone or differences with someone. If we choose option A, That would mean that Descartes and Spinoza were arguing over their ideas. That is not what the passage is saying. It is just saying that their ideas were different. They were not arguing about it or fighting about it. So the answer to the 32nd question is J. Before the next question, that is the 33rd question, there is a long sentence which does not have any blank. Sometimes we do need to understand the meanings of such sentences between questions, but usually such sentences help us skip some part of the paragraph. That is, we do not need to read that part too closely. Descartes believed that people accept or reject information is this part of the paragraph, and a lot of words are exactly the same between the question and the paragraph. Similarly, this part about Spinoza arguing that people accept all information is also very clearly there in the paragraph. The confusing part, however, is that because many of these words are there in this sentence, you could just choose to skip the whole sentence and start looking for the answer somewhere here where Spinoza's name is mentioned again. That would be incorrect. This part of the paragraph talks about different ways that people accept or reject information or misinformation. And this part says how this information is accepted or rejected. In the question, this is mentioned in a separate sentence. Spinoza believed that a distinct something is involved in these stages of accepting or rejecting information. The answer from the passage is cognitive process. Cognitive process means the way the brain thinks, learns, and understands information. The word separate from the paragraph corresponds with the word distinct from the question. Cognitive process means mental operation. The answer to the 33rd question is mental operation H. Moving on to the next questions now. One single sentence in the question has two blanks. Let's start with these. In the paragraph, this is where we have found the answers. For the next set of questions, we'll start from here. Let's understand the question first. Research has provided something for Spinoza's theory. So there was something that Spinoza said, and research has provided something for what he said. It would appear that people accept all encountered information as if it were true. So, any information that people come across, people treat that information as true, even if this is for an extremely dash. So, extremely here means very. So, even if this belief that this information is true is for extremely something, and it is only later or afterwards that people label or tag this information as true or false. In the paragraph, this is the part from which we expect the answer of the 34th question. Empirical evidence from research, that is, recent research evidence. So, recent research has provided something for Spinoza's account. From this, we can get that it has provided support for his account or his theory, or it has provided evidence for his theory. The answer for this one is B, and chances are someone would get it wrong because we do not expect the exact word in the answer. In any case, the answer to the 34th question is B. Moving on to the 35th question now. Let's continue with the rest of this sentence. it would appear that people accept all encountered information as if it were true. So, any information that people come across, they accept as true and do not label this information as true or false until later. After this, in the paragraph, some parts of the paragraph and question are very similar. People appear to, it would appear that people encode all information, accept all information, as if it were true, as if it were true, even if only momentarily. Momentarily means for a very short period of time, and that is the answer we have. Even if this is for an extremely short period. The answer to the 35th question is short period E. Now we have only one question left. In the passage, this is where we found the last answer. Interestingly, the paragraph is ending with this sentence, but a large part of this sentence is still left. We expect the answer to the 36th question from this paragraph itself. We have read till here when looking for the previous answer. Let's start from here. A pattern that seems consistent with or in agreement with the fact that resources for skepticism and resources for perceiving and encoding are in blank in the brain. The biggest confusion in locating this answer is we need to understand exactly what the sentence is saying, because parts of the sentence which are together in the question are far away in the paragraph. These are two things that brain does, and these happen in different parts of the brain. Different parts, different locations. The answer to the 36th question is different locations, C. I want to point out this word skepticism, which means to doubt something or not to believe in something. One interesting thing is that the spelling of skepticism in the passage and in the question are different. One is American spelling, the other one is British spelling. And another thing is that this is a word I've seen in quite a few IELTS readings. So make sure you understand this word. Even though in this case you could have found the answer without knowing the exact meaning of this word. With this, we are done with these questions. Now we are left with just yes, no, not given. Let's start with these. The answers to the yes, no, not given questions are in the same order as the information in the text. For this reason, I sometimes choose to do these questions first, but that is only if I feel that it would be easy to locate where the answers could be in the text. Here, this is not the case. There are no capitalized words or numbers. That is why I left this till the end. As I glanced through all of these questions, the only words which I think could be there in the passage as it is without any change are elementary school. On your screen, you can see where we found the answers to the other questions of this passage. Till now, there's been no question from the third paragraph and from the seventh and eighth paragraphs. So these are the three paragraphs we scan through looking for anything related to elementary school, and it is mentioned in the seventh paragraph. So this is where we'll start from. The 37th question says, campaigns designed to correct misinformation will fail to achieve their purpose if people are unable to understand them. Campaigns means planned efforts to do something. The question means that any campaigns or planned efforts will fail if people don't understand what the campaign is saying. In the paragraph, it's written for corrective campaigns, that is, campaigns designed to correct information, to be persuasive or to be able to persuade people, or for the campaigns to be successful, audiences of these campaigns need to be able to comprehend them. Comprehend means understand. So, for the campaigns to work, audiences or people need to understand the campaigns, which means if people are unable to understand the campaigns will fail. The answer to the 37th question is yes. Let's understand the 38th question now. Attempts to teach elementary school students about misinformation have been opposed. That means someone has tried to teach elementary school students about misinformation, and someone has been against these attempts to teach the students. This is the sentence from the passage which mentions elementary school. This is a comparatively difficult sentence. What it means is that some audiences may not know about the possible ability or possible impact of misinformation. That is how big information could be. And because of this, it is suggested that teaching about media and misinformation in media can be useful from elementary school. Nowhere in the passage is it mentioned whether the elementary school students have been taught about misinformation. And if they have not been taught about it, there is no mention of whether someone has opposed it. So the answer to the 38th question is not given. Moving on to the 39th question. It may be possible to overcome or to solve the problem of misinformation in a relatively short period. That is, comparatively very quickly. This is where we found the answer to the 38th question. We start looking after this. Solutions and remedies are mentioned at the beginning of the 8th paragraph. So we could just skip this part of 7th paragraph and start looking at the 8th paragraph directly. Still, let's quickly understand what the ending of the 7th paragraph is saying. Journalists and experts talk about and mention about fake news, but people still cannot differentiate between false stories when they are reading things. This has nothing to do with the solutions at all. So we move on to the 8th paragraph. At this time, many people are passionately developing potential solutions and remedies. That is, ways to overcome the problem of misinformation. The journey forward, that is, the journey of finding solutions, will be a long and arduous one, which means the journey would be long and difficult. It will not be short. The answer to the 39th question is no. Moving on to the 40th question now. We'll start looking for the answer to the 40th question from here. The 40th question says the need to keep up with new information is hugely exaggerated in today's world. Exaggerated means to talk about something as if it is much bigger than it really is. What this question means is that it is not as important to stay updated with new information as people say it is. We are left with just 3 sentences of the passage. Let's see what they say. The first sentence says that the remedies or solutions to misinformation require theoretical things as well as some kind of monitoring tools. And if there is information in the media which is incorrect, it needs to be opposed. This sentence says that misinformation occurs because humans make mistake. And the last sentence says that there is no single solution to the whole problem of misinformation. We need organized efforts to fight misinformation. Nowhere is new information mentioned or anything being exaggerated mentioned. So the answer to the 40th question is not given. With this, we are done with all the questions of this passage. Hope you found this video useful. Do like, share, and subscribe. Spread the word. That's it for now. All the very best.